Decker lived a life meticulously stripped bare in flashy cars. No sprawling mansion overlooking a sun-drenched coast. Just a quiet cottage nestled amidst the rugged Scottish Highlands. A world away from the explosions and betrayals that had defined his past. He spent his days restoring antique motorcycles. The rhythmic clang of metal against metal, a strangely therapeutic counterpoint to the echoes of gunfire that still haunted his nights. He sought solace in the solitude, a stark contrast to the camaraderie he once shared with men like Victor. Victor. The name was a brand seared onto Decker's soul. They had been brothers in arms, forged in the crucible of countless Black Ops missions, their loyalty unquestionable, their bond unbreakable. Or so Decker had believed. The mission in Chechnya, that's where it had all gone wrong. A double cross, a stolen cache of weapons, and Victor's descent into a world of shadows and unimaginable wealth. Decker had walked away, disgusted and disillusioned. Believing Victor was dead, he had tried to bury the past, to build a new life from the ashes of the old, but some ghosts refused to stay buried. His forced retirement wasn't a choice. Not exactly. It was a consequence. A reckoning for the lives he'd taken, the lines he'd crossed. The agency, ever pragmatic, had deemed him a liability, a loose end that needed tying up. They offered him a deal. Anonymity in exchange for silence. He took it, grateful for the chance to disappear, to atone in his own way. But the past had a way of finding you. Even in the remote corners of the world, the news came indirectly, filtered through the digital whispers of the dark web. A world Decker had thought he'd left behind. An explosion ripped through a humanitarian aid convoy in Eastern Europe, leaving a trail of bodies and shattered vehicles. The fingerprints were all over it. Victor's signature chaos. The weapons used were cutting-edge, untraceable, the kind only available on the blackest of markets. Then came the confirmation, a grainy image captured by a satellite. Victor, older, harder, his eyes burning with a cold, ruthless ambition. He was no longer the man Decker had known. He was something else entirely. But the true gut punch came with the second report. The attack hadn't been random. It had been targeted. The convoy was carrying medicine and supplies to a small orphanage, a place Decker had been quietly supporting for years, a small act of penance. The children all gone. Victor had reached out from the depths of his depravity and struck at the only thing Decker truly cared about. This wasn't just about money or power anymore. It was personal. The quiet life Decker had so painstakingly constructed shattered like glass. The motorcycles remained untouched, the clang of metal replaced by the gnawing ache of grief and a simmering rage. He knew what he had to do. He had to find Victor. He had to stop him. And he had to make him pay. The world of shadows had just gained another player, and this time it was personal. The hunter had become the hunted. The stage was set. The explosion that claimed the orphanage wasn't just an act of wanton cruelty. It was a meticulously crafted message, a declaration of war delivered with brutal efficiency. The attack served its purpose, dragging Decker back into the game. But it also revealed something about Victor's current operations, the type of explosives used, a rare and highly unstable compound, pointed to a specific source, a clandestine facility located deep within the Ural Mountains, a place rumored to be a haven for rogue scientists and black market arms manufacturers. The news reports, carefully scrubbed of any real detail, spoke of a tragic accident and a failure in the humanitarian aid network. But Decker saw through the layers of obfuscation that he knew Victor was sending him a message, a twisted invitation to a deadly game of cat and mouse. The destruction of the orphanage wasn't just about hurting him. It was about proving Victor's power, his reach, his utter lack of remorse. As Decker began to piece together the fragments of information, he unearthed a network of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and shadowy intermediaries, all leading back to Victor's growing empire. It became clear that Victor wasn't just dealing arms. He was manufacturing them, innovating new and terrifying weapons of destruction. He had become a one-man arms race, a walking, talking threat to global stability. The attack on the orphanage also revealed something else. Victor's disregard for collateral damage. In the past, Victor had always operated with a certain level of precision, minimizing civilian casualties whenever possible. But now, it seemed, anything was expendable in his pursuit of power. This was no longer the Victor that Decker knew. the man who had once risked his life to save a child caught in the crossfire. This Victor was a monster, a shadow of his former self. Decker knew he couldn't go to the authorities. Victor had too much influence, too many connections. He was untouchable, shielded by layers of money and corruption. Decker was on his own, a lone wolf facing a global threat. He started to gather his resources, dusting off old contacts, calling in favors from the few people he still trusted. He needed information, weapons, and a way to disappear, to operate outside the system, beyond the reach of Victor's long arm. The first piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. A burner phone left in a hidden compartment of one of Decker's old motorcycles that a single text message, encrypted and untraceable. "He knows you're coming. Marrakesh. Find Zara." Zara. The name was vaguely familiar, a ghost from another life. A woman who had once worked alongside Victor, a skilled intelligence operative with a knack for getting information. She had disappeared years ago, rumored to be dead or in hiding. But if she was still alive, and if she was willing to talk, she could be Decker's only hope of stopping Victor. Marrakesh. The game was on. The board was set, and Decker was ready to play. The cryptic message, a lifeline thrown into the churning waters of Decker's past, felt like both a promise and a threat. Marrakesh. Zara. He needed to move fast, but carefully. Victor wouldn't have simply left a trail. He would have laid a trap, a gauntlet of surveillance and assassins designed to eliminate any threat before it could reach him. Decker liquidated his assets. The sale of his beloved motorcycles, a particularly painful sacrifice. He wired the money to a series of untraceable accounts, setting up a network of safe houses and contacts along his intended route. He packed light, a Glock 19, a combat knife, and a satchel filled with cash, fake IDs, and a handful of specialized tools. He was a ghost once more, shedding his civilian skin and embracing the predator within. Before leaving Scotland, Decker paid a visit to an old friend, a grizzled ex-SAS operative named Mac, who lived a secluded life in a remote cabin in the Highlands. Mac had been Decker's mentor, teaching him everything he knew about survival, combat, and the art of disappearing. Decker needed Mac's expertise, his knowledge of the underworld, and his access to weapons. Mac, a man of few words, listened intently as Decker recounted the events of the past few weeks. He didn't offer sympathy or platitudes. He simply nodded. Understanding the burden Decker carried, he led Decker to a hidden armory beneath his cabin, a treasure trove of weaponry and tactical gear. "Take what you need," Max said, his voice raspy. "But remember, Decker, this path you're on, it's a dark one. To be sure you can live with the consequences." Decker chose a suppressed sniper rifle, a compact submachine gun, and a handful of grenades. He also took a specialized communication device, a secure satellite phone that could bypass conventional networks. "Zara," Max said, his eyes narrowed. "I knew her. She was good. Too good. Maybe be careful. Decker, she's not someone to be trifled with." With Mac's blessing and his arsenal secured, Decker left Scotland. Disappearing into the anonymity of the international airport, he traveled under an assumed name, blending into the crowds, his senses on high alert that he knew Victor's people would be watching, searching for any sign of him. He had to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless. The flight to Marrakesh was long and uneventful, but Decker used the time to study the city, memorizing maps, identifying potential safe houses, and analyzing Victor's known associates in the area. He knew Marrakesh was a city of secrets, a melting pot of cultures and criminal activity. Finding Zara wouldn't be easy, but Decker was determined that he had a score to settle, and he wouldn't rest until Victor was brought to justice. The globe-trotting showdown had begun. Marrakesh was just the first stop on a deadly journey. The loyalty he once knew was dead, replaced by a cold, hard reality where only one of them would walk away. Marrakesh assaulted Decker's senses the moment he stepped off the plane. The oppressive heat, the cacophony of sounds, the swirling aromas of spices and exhaust fumes. It was a sensory overload designed to disorient and confuse. He navigated the crowded airport with practiced ease, his eyes scanning the throng for any sign of surveillance. He knew he was being watched. It was only a matter of time before Victor's people made their move. He took a prearranged taxi to a rundown hotel in the Medina, the old city, a labyrinthine Maze of narrow alleyways and bustling marketplaces. The hotel was a dive, but it offered anonymity and a strategic location. He checked in under his assumed name, paid in cash, and immediately set about securing his room, checking for hidden cameras and listening devices. Finding Zara proved to be more difficult than he anticipated. He spent the next few hours scouring the Medina, asking discreet questions, flashing a photo of Zara to the local merchants and street vendors. Most of them claimed not to recognize her. But Decker sensed a flicker of recognition in their eyes, a hesitation that betrayed their fear. He knew they were protecting her, or protecting themselves from Victor. As dusk settled over the city, casting long shadows across the alleyways, Decker was ambushed. Two men, armed with knives, emerged from the darkness, their faces hidden behind scarves. They moved with a speed and precision that suggested professional training. Decker reacted instinctively, disarming one of the attackers and using his own knife against him. The other attacker lunged, but Decker dodged the blow and delivered a swift kick to the man's chest, sending him crashing into a nearby stall. The fight was brief and brutal. Decker dispatched both attackers with ruthless efficiency, leaving them bleeding and unconscious in the alleyway. He knew this was just the beginning. Victor was testing him, probing his defenses. He needed to find Zara, and he needed to find her fast. He returned to his hotel room, cleaned his wounds, and reevaluated his strategy. He couldn't rely on direct inquiries. He needed a different approach. He remembered Mac mentioning Zara's connection to a local smuggling ring, a network of criminals who operated in the shadows of Marrakesh. He decided to infiltrate their ranks, to use their connections to find Zara. He changed his clothes, donned a local disguise, and ventured back into the Medina, seeking out the seediest bars and gambling dens. He started spreading rumors, boasting about his skills as a smuggler, offering his services to anyone who would listen. It wasn't long before he attracted the attention of a local gang leader, a hulking brute named Omar, who eyed Decker with suspicion. Omar challenged Decker to a game of chance, a high-stakes dice game played in a backroom filled with smoke and shady characters. Decker accepted the challenge, knowing this was his opportunity to prove himself. He played with skill and cunning, winning hand after hand, earning Omar's respect and his trust. As the night wore on, Decker subtly steered the conversation towards Zara, mentioning her name in passing, gauging Omar's reaction. Omar's eyes narrowed. "Zara," he said, his voice low. "She is a ghost. It is best to forget her." Decker pressed him further, offering him a generous sum of money in exchange for information. Omar hesitated, then relented. "I can take you to someone who knows her," he said. "But be warned, this is a dangerous game you are playing." The first step was taken. The globetrotting was truly about to begin. Omar led Decker through the labyrinthine alleyways of the Medina, deeper into the heart of the smuggling network. The air grew thick with the smell of hashish and desperation. They arrived at a dilapidated warehouse, its entrance guarded by heavily armed men. Omar exchanged a few words with the guards, and they were allowed to pass. Inside the warehouse, Decker saw crates stacked high, their contents concealed beneath tarpaulins. Men scurried around, loading and unloading the crates, their movements hurried and furtive. Omar led Decker to a back room, where an old woman sat hunched over a table, her face etched with wrinkles and her eyes clouded with wisdom. "This is Fatima," Omar said. "She knows Zara." Fatima looked up at Decker, her gaze piercing and assessing. "You seek Zara," she said, her voice raspy. "Why?" Decker explained his situation, his voice low and urgent. He told her about Victor, about the orphanage, about his determination to stop him. Fatima listened intently, her expression unreadable. "Zara is in hiding," Fatima said. "She knows too much about Victor. He wants her dead." Fatima hesitated, then continued. "Victor is planning a shipment. A large shipment of weapons. It is leaving Marrakesh tonight." Decker's ears perked up. This was his chance. "Where is the shipment going?" he asked. Fatima shook her head. "I do not know, but I know who does." She pointed to a young woman standing in the shadows, her face partially obscured by a veil. "This is Aisha. She works for Victor. She knows the details of the shipment." Aisha stepped forward, her eyes wary. She was young and beautiful, but there was a hardness in her gaze that suggested she was not to be trifled with. "I know who you are," Aisha said to Decker, her voice cold. "You are a ghost from Victor's past. He has been expecting you." Decker drew his weapon, pointing it at Aisha. "Tell me about the shipment," he demanded. Aisha remained defiant. "I will tell you nothing," she said. Suddenly, the warehouse doors burst open, and a squad of heavily armed men stormed inside. their weapons trained on Decker and Aisha. Victor sends his regards, their leader said, his voice dripping with menace. The firefight erupted, the warehouse exploding into a chaos of gunfire and explosions. Decker fought with a ferocity born of desperation that he moved with lightning speed, dodging bullets, disarming attackers, and delivering lethal blows. Aisha, surprisingly, proved to be a skilled fighter herself, wielding a knife with deadly precision. They fought back-to-back, a temporary alliance forged in the heat of battle. As they fought their way through the warehouse, Decker noticed several crates marked with a distinctive symbol. A symbol he recognized from his research. It was the logo of a shadowy organization known as the Serpent's Hand, a group of terrorists known for their ruthlessness and their access to advanced weaponry. He realized that Victor wasn't just selling arms. He was supplying terrorists, fueling global conflict for his own personal gain. That he had to stop the shipment, no matter the cost. He grabbed Aisha's arm. "We need to stop those crates from leaving," he said. Aisha nodded in agreement. "I know where they are taking them," she said. "I can help you." Decker wasn't sure if he could trust her, but he had no choice. He needed her help. Together, they fought their way out of the warehouse, leaving a trail of bodies in their wake. They commandeered a nearby jeep and sped off into the night, pursuing the arms shipment, their alliance forged in the fires of a desperate battle. The first major action sequence was complete, but the globe-trotting showdown was far from over. Aisha's ambiguous allegiance added a dangerous element to the mission. As Decker and Aisha sped through the Moroccan desert in pursuit of the arms shipment, the harsh landscape blurring into a monotonous backdrop. Memories flashed through Decker's mind, shards of a past he had tried so hard to bury. He saw Victor, not as the ruthless arms dealer he had become, but as the young, idealistic soldier he once was. Flashback sequence begins. The year is 2008. Decker and Victor, both fresh-faced recruits in a Black Ops unit, are rappelling down the side of a building in Grozny, Chechnya. The city is war-torn, ravaged by years of conflict. Their mission? To extract a high-value target, a Chechen rebel leader who possesses vital intelligence about a planned terrorist attack. "Remember the plan, Decker," Victor says, his voice calm and focused despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "In and out. No unnecessary risks." Decker nods in agreement. They breach the building, moving through the darkened corridors with practiced stealth. They encounter resistance, small pockets of rebel fighters, but they quickly dispatch them, their training and teamwork impeccable. They reach the rebel leader's hideout, a heavily fortified room guarded by a handful of loyal bodyguards. A fierce firefight ensues. Decker and Victor fight side by side, their movements synchronized, their trust in each other absolute. They manage to subdue the bodyguards and capture the rebel leader. They are escorting the rebel leader out of the building. They stumble upon a group of civilians huddled in a basement, terrified and desperate. Among them is a young girl, no more than 5 years old, clutching a tattered teddy bear. Victor's eyes soften as he looks at the girl. He remembers his own daughter, whom he hasn't seen in months. "We need to get them out of here," Victor says to Decker. "It's not safe." Decker hesitates. Their mission is to extract the rebel leader, not to rescue civilians. But he sees the determination in Victor's eyes, the unwavering commitment to doing what is right. They decide to split up. Decker will escort the rebel leader to the extraction point, while Victor will lead the civilians to safety. As Decker is leading the rebel leader away, he hears a series of explosions. He turns back to see the building collapsing, engulfed in flames. He rushes back to the basement, desperate to find Victor and the civilians. He finds Victor standing amidst the rubble, his face covered in soot, his eyes filled with despair. The civilians are gone, buried beneath the debris. The young girl with the teddy bear is dead. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Victor says, his voice choked with emotion. "We were supposed to save them." Decker puts his hand on Victor's shoulder, trying to offer comfort, but he knows that nothing he can say will ease the pain. The mission in Chechnya changes Victor. He becomes disillusioned, cynical, questioning the morality of their actions. He starts to see the world in shades of gray, blurring the lines between right and wrong. He begins to believe that the only way to survive is to play the game, to embrace the darkness. Flashback sequence ends. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Decker shook his head, trying to dispel the memories. He knew that the Victor he had known was long gone, replaced by a monster driven by greed and a thirst for power. But a part of him still clung to the hope that there was still some good left in Victor, that he could be redeemed. But he also knew that hope was a dangerous thing, a weakness that could be exploited. Aisha drove. She glanced at Decker, a silent question in her eyes. The desert stretched before them, an endless expanse of sand and shadows, mirroring the uncertain path that lay ahead. Aisha revealed that the arms shipment was destined for a remote airstrip in the Atlas Mountains, where it would be loaded onto a cargo plane bound for Hong Kong. The Serpent's Hand had a major operation plan there, and Victor was providing them with the tools they needed to carry it out. Hong Kong, a city of gleaming skyscrapers and hidden underworlds, a financial hub where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. It was also a city where Victor had deep connections, a network of corrupt officials and criminal associates who helped him launder money and move weapons. Decker knew that stopping the shipment in Hong Kong would be a difficult task. He would be operating on enemy territory, surrounded by Victor's allies. But he had no choice, that he couldn't let those weapons fall into the hands of the Serpent's Hand, that he had to stop them. No matter the cost, he and Aisha secured passage on a cargo plane heading to Hong Kong, stowing away in the hold, surrounded by crates of electronics and textiles. The flight was long and uncomfortable, but Decker used the time to study the city, memorizing maps, identifying potential safe houses, and analyzing Victor's known associates in the area. As they approached Hong Kong, Aisha grew increasingly nervous. "Victor has eyes everywhere in this city," she said. "He will know we are here." Decker nodded in agreement. "We need to be careful," he said. "We need to stay one step ahead of him." They disembarked from the plane, blending into the crowds of the bustling airport. They made their way to a prearranged safe house, a small apartment in a rundown neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. The apartment was sparsely furnished, but it offered a degree of anonymity. Decker immediately set about tracking the arms shipment. He used his contacts in the underworld to gather information. Piecing together the details of Victor's operation, he learned that the weapons were being stored in a heavily guarded warehouse on the Kowloon waterfront. Awaiting delivery to the Serpent's Hand, he and Aisha planned their attack, meticulously mapping out the warehouse, identifying security vulnerabilities, and devising a strategy to infiltrate the building. They knew they would be outnumbered and outgunned, but they had the element of surprise on their side. As they prepared to launch their attack, they were ambushed. A squad of Victor's men stormed the apartment, their weapons blazing. Decker and Aisha fought back fiercely, but they were quickly overwhelmed. They managed to escape the apartment, but they were now on the run, pursued by Victor's relentless assassins. A high-stakes chase ensued through the crowded streets of Hong Kong, a blur of neon lights and screeching tires. Decker and Aisha dodged bullets, jumped rooftops, and weaved through traffic, their pursuers hot on their heels. They were outgunned and outmanned, but they refused to give up. The chase culminated in a dramatic showdown at the Kowloon waterfront, amidst the towering skyscrapers and the bustling harbor. Decker and Aisha fought with a desperate ferocity, using their skills and their wits to outmaneuver their pursuers. They managed to evade capture, but they knew that Victor was closing in. They needed to find a way to stop the arms shipment, and they needed to do it fast. Hong Kong was proving to be a deadly maze, having narrowly escaped the ambush. Decker and Aisha found refuge in a hidden corner of the Kowloon walled city, a lawless enclave teeming with criminals and outcasts. Decker tended to his wounds. He couldn't shake the feeling that Aisha was holding something back. Her knowledge of Victor's operations was too precise, her willingness to help too convenient. He decided to confront her. "Why are you really helping me, Aisha?" Decker asked, his voice hard. "You work for Victor. You knew about the shipment. What's your game?" Aisha hesitated, her eyes darting nervously. "I told you," she said. "I want to stop Victor. He's become too dangerous, too reckless." Decker scoffed. "That's not the whole story. I can see it in your eyes. What are you really after?" Aisha sighed, her shoulders slumping. "All right," she said. "You deserve to know the truth." She revealed that she wasn't just a low-level operative in Victor's organization. She was his protégé, his trusted confidant. But she had grown disillusioned with his methods, his willingness to sacrifice innocent lives for profit. But her motives went deeper than just disillusionment. Aisha explained that Victor wasn't just selling weapons. He was selling something far more valuable, a next-generation targeting system, capable of pinpoint accuracy and devastating power. This system, codenamed Oracle, was the key to Victor's growing influence, the reason why the Serpent's Hand was willing to pay him a fortune. Aisha wasn't interested in stopping the weapons shipment. She was after Oracle. She believed that the technology was too dangerous to be in Victor's hands, or the hands of the terrorists. She wanted to steal it, to use it to expose Victor's operation and bring him down. "I need Oracle," Aisha said. "It's the only way to stop him for good." Decker was stunned by her revelation. He had been so focused on stopping the weapons shipment that he had overlooked the bigger picture. He realized that Aisha wasn't just a morally ambiguous ally. She was a player in her own right. With her own agenda. He was faced with a difficult choice. He could abandon Aisha, pursue the weapons shipment on his own, and risk failing to stop the Serpent's Hand. Or he could trust her, work with her to steal Oracle, and potentially bring down Victor's entire operation. He weighed the risks and the rewards, considering the lives that were at stake. He knew that Aisha was dangerous, that she couldn't be trusted completely. But he also knew that she was his best chance of stopping Victor. "All right," Decker said. "I'll help you get Oracle, but you and I are clear. After this, we go our separate ways." Aisha nodded in agreement. "Agreed," she said. "But you need to understand. Getting to Oracle won't be easy. Victor will protect it at all costs." Decker smirked. "That's what I'm counting on." Their temporary alliance, born of convenience and fueled by mistrust, was now forged in a shared objective. The hunt for Oracle began. The true stakes of the game in Hong Kong were now revealed. To get to Oracle, Aisha explained. They needed to access Victor's secure data vault, located in his heavily guarded penthouse suite atop a skyscraper in Hong Kong. The security system was impenetrable, protected by layers of encryption and biometric scanners. But Aisha knew a way in. She had once been entrusted with the access codes, a privilege she had abused to create a backdoor into the system. They infiltrated the skyscraper, navigating the labyrinthine corridors with stealth and precision. They bypassed security cameras, disabled alarms, and neutralized guards, their movements coordinated and efficient. Aisha's knowledge of the building's layout and security protocols proved invaluable. They reached Victor's penthouse suite, a luxurious oasis of opulence and power. The data vault was located behind a hidden panel in Victor's office, concealed behind a priceless painting. As Aisha worked to unlock the panel, Decker stood guard, his senses on high alert. Suddenly, they were ambushed. Victor's men, alerted to their presence, stormed the suite, their weapons blazing. Decker and Aisha fought back fiercely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. They managed to hold their own, but they knew they couldn't stay there for long. Aisha finally unlocked the panel, revealing the entrance to the data vault. She raced inside, while Decker held off the attackers. He fought with a ferocity born of desperation, using his skills and his wits to outmaneuver his pursuers. Aisha emerged from the data vault, carrying a small device. "I have Oracle," she said. "Let's get out of here." They fought their way out of the penthouse suite, escaping the skyscraper and disappearing into the crowded streets of Hong Kong. With Oracle in their possession, Decker and Aisha had a powerful weapon against Victor, but they needed to analyze the data, to understand its capabilities and to determine how to use it to stop him. Aisha explained that the data was encrypted, requiring a specialized decryption key located in Berlin, in the possession of one of Victor's key lieutenants, a Ruthless Stasi agent named Eric. Berlin. A city of history and intrigue, a crossroads of cultures and espionage. It was also a city where Victor had a strong presence. A network of corrupt officials and criminal associates who helped him move money and weapons across Europe. Decker and Aisha secured passage on a private jet heading to Berlin, using fake passports and forged documents. They knew they were taking a risk, but they had no choice. They needed to get to Eric, and they needed to get to him fast. Upon arriving in Berlin, they made their way to a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Eric's known headquarters. They infiltrated the warehouse, navigating the darkened corridors with stealth and precision. They encountered resistance, small pockets of Eric's men, but they quickly dispatched them, their training and teamwork impeccable. They reached Eric's office, a Spartan room furnished with a desk, a chair, and a single lamp. Eric was sitting behind the desk, his face illuminated. By the lamplight, he was a gaunt, wiry man with cold, calculating eyes. Decker confronted Eric, demanding the decryption key for Oracle. Eric refused to cooperate, taunting Decker and boasting about Victor's power. Decker lost his patience that he grabbed Eric, slamming him against the wall that he interrogated him relentlessly, using every trick he knew to break him down. Finally, Eric cracked that he revealed the decryption key, as well as crucial information about Victor's ultimate plan, a massive arms sale to a dangerous terrorist organization, a deal that would destabilize the entire region. The sale was scheduled to take place on a remote island in the Mediterranean in a few days' time. Decker had a choice to make: continue after Victor or stop a massive arms deal. The clock was ticking. Victor's arms sale was scheduled to take place in less than 48 hours. Decker and Aisha had to act fast. Using the information extracted from Eric, they pinpointed the location of the sale, a remote, privately owned island in the Mediterranean, a fortress of concrete and steel, heavily guarded by Victor's mercenaries. The island was a strategic location, far from prying eyes, surrounded by treacherous waters. Victor had transformed it into his personal kingdom, a haven for his criminal activities. Infiltrating the island would be a suicide mission. But Decker knew he had no choice. He couldn't let those weapons fall into the hands of terrorists. He and Aisha secured passage on a small fishing boat, posing as tourists. As they approached the island, they could see the imposing walls and watchtowers, the armed guards patrolling the perimeter. They knew they were walking into a death trap. They landed on a secluded beach, far from the main harbor. They moved through the dense vegetation, their senses on high alert. They encountered patrols of mercenaries, but they quickly and silently neutralized them. Their movements coordinated and efficient. As they made their way deeper into the island, they encountered a series of deadly traps, laser grids, pressure plates, and hidden cameras. Aisha's knowledge of Victor's security protocols proved invaluable. She was able to disable the traps, allowing them to proceed undetected. They reached Victor's headquarters, a massive concrete bunker built into the side of a cliff. The entrance was heavily guarded, protected by multiple layers of security. Decker and Aisha knew they couldn't storm the entrance. They needed to find another way in. Aisha revealed that she knew of a secret tunnel that led directly into Victor's command center. She had used the tunnel in the past to access sensitive information. They followed the tunnel, navigating the dark and claustrophobic passageways. As they approached the command center, they could hear voices, the sounds of negotiations and preparations. They knew they were close. They breached the command center, bursting into the room, their weapons blazing. Victor was standing at the head of a long table, surrounded by his lieutenants and the leaders of the terrorist organization. The room erupted into chaos, a maelstrom of gunfire and explosions. Decker and Aisha fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their skills and their wits pushed to the limit. They faced wave after wave of mercenaries, each more skilled and ruthless than the last. They used cover, maneuvered strategically, and delivered lethal blows. They fought back to back, their alliance forged in the fires of battle. The island was a deadly maze, and they were trapped inside, fighting for their lives. The final showdown was about to begin. The air crackled with tension, the scent of gunpowder filling the air. The fate of the world hung in the balance. The command center descended into pandemonium. Gunfire echoed, shattering glass and ripping through flesh. Decker and Aisha fought with a practiced synergy, taking down mercenaries and disrupting the terrorist leaders' escape attempts. Amidst the chaos, Decker locked eyes with Victor. A flicker of recognition, a hint of sadness, passed between them before Victor's face hardened into a mask of cold determination. Victor shoved aside the remaining terrorists and advanced towards Decker, his movements fluid and deadly. He discarded his weapon, signaling his intention for a personal, hand-to-hand confrontation. Decker mirrored his action, dropping his gun and preparing for the fight of his life. Flashback sequence, intercut with the fight, Scene 1 Decker and Victor, younger and laughing, are sparring in a training room. Their movements are fast, precise, and playful. They trade blows, testing each other's skills, their camaraderie evident in their smiles. Fight sequence Decker and Victor exchange a flurry of punches and kicks. Decker blocks a blow, countering with a swift jab to Victor's ribs. Victor stumbles back, momentarily winded. Scene 2 * Decker and Victor are sharing a drink at a bar, celebrating a successful mission. They are toasting to their friendship, their loyalty, their shared commitment to protecting the world. ***. Fight sequence ***. Victor retaliates with a powerful kick to Decker's head, sending him crashing to the ground. Decker struggles to his feet, his head ringing. He wipes the blood from his mouth, his eyes narrowed. Scene 3 * Decker and Victor are rescuing civilians from a burning building, working together to carry them to safety. They are risking their lives to save others, their heroism shining through the smoke and flames. ***. Fight sequence ***. Decker and Victor grapple, their bodies locked together in a brutal struggle. They slam each other against the walls, their grunts and groans echoing through the room. Victor gains the upper hand, pinning Decker to the ground. Scene 4 * Decker and Victor are arguing, their voices raised in anger. They are debating the morality of a mission, their differing viewpoints clashing. Victor is becoming disillusioned, questioning the orders they are given. ***. Fight sequence ***. Decker manages to break free, kicking Victor away. He rises to his feet, his face contorted with rage. He charges at Victor, delivering a series of punishing blows. Victor blocks and parries, his movements becoming increasingly desperate. ***. The fight was brutal and personal, a reflection of their fractured relationship. Decker and Victor knew each other's moves, their strengths and weaknesses. They traded blows, each strike carrying the weight of their shared history, their broken trust. Decker fought with a fierce determination, driven by his desire to stop Victor, to prevent him from causing any more harm. Victor fought with a desperate rage, fueled by his disillusionment, his cynicism, his belief that the world was beyond saving. The fight raged on, the command center began to collapse, the structural integrity compromised by the gunfire and explosions. The ceiling started to crack, the walls started to crumble. Decker knew that they had to get out of there. But he couldn't leave without stopping Victor. He mustered all his strength, delivering a final, decisive blow. He struck Victor in the face, sending him crashing to the ground. Victor lay motionless, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. The room was collapsing around them. Decker had to make a choice: finish Victor, or escape and stop the arms deal. Decker hesitated, his hand hovering over his weapon. Victor lay defeated, but the arms sale was still underway. He looked around for Aisha, but she was nowhere to be seen. The command center was collapsing, the roof threatening to cave in at any moment. He had to make a decision, and he had to make it fast. Suddenly, Aisha appeared, her face covered in soot, her eyes filled with determination. She was holding a detonator in her hand. "There's no time," she shouted over the din of the collapsing building. "The arms are being loaded onto trucks. I've set charges on the main access road. I can detonate them, stopping the shipment, but it will cost me my life." Decker stared at her in disbelief. He had never fully trusted Aisha, but he hadn't expected this. She was willing to sacrifice herself to stop Victor's plan. "There has to be another way," he said, his voice pleading. Aisha shook her head. "There isn't," she said. "This is the only way." She looked at Decker, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and resolve. "Thank you, Decker," she said, "for giving me a chance to make things right." And with that, she ran towards the exit, disappearing into the collapsing building. Decker knew what he had to do. He couldn't let Aisha die in vain. He had to make sure that her sacrifice wasn't for nothing. He raced towards the exit, determined to stop the arms sale, even if it meant risking his own life. As he reached the exit, he heard a deafening explosion. The ground shook, the building trembled. He stumbled out of the command center into the open air. He saw a plume of smoke rising in the distance, the main access road blocked by debris. Aisha had succeeded. She had stopped the arms shipment, but at what cost? Decker stood there, amidst the wreckage, his heart heavy with grief and guilt. He had used Aisha, manipulated her, and now she was dead. He had thought he could control her, but she had proven to be more than just a pawn in his game. She had been a hero, a woman who had sacrificed herself for the greater good. As Decker stood there, lost in his thoughts, he heard a voice behind him. "It's over, Decker." He turned around to see Victor standing there, his face bruised and bloody, his eyes filled with hatred. Victor had survived the collapse. He was still alive, and he was still determined to carry out his plan. The final showdown was about to begin, but this time, it was personal. It was a battle for revenge, for redemption, for the soul of a man who had lost his way, and only one of them would walk away. The choice Decker made was about to define his future, and the future of countless others. Victor stood silhouetted against the burning wreckage, a figure of rage and despair. He pulled a knife from his boot, the steel glinting in the firelight. "You took everything from me, Decker," he snarled. "My power, my ambition, my chance to make a difference. Now, I'm going to take everything from you." Decker stood his ground, his face grim. He was tired, wounded, and emotionally drained, but he knew he couldn't back down. He had to stop Victor, once and for all. He adopted a fighting stance, preparing himself for the final battle. The two men circled each other, their movements cautious and deliberate. The air crackled with tension, the only sound the crackling of the flames in their ragged breathing. Victor lunged, his knife flashing. Decker dodged the blow, countering with a swift kick to Victor's arm. The knife clattered to the ground. They grappled, their bodies locked together in a brutal struggle. They slammed each other against the walls, their grunts and groans echoing through the wreckage. Victor was strong and skilled, but Decker was fueled by a righteous anger, a burning desire to avenge the innocent lives that Victor had destroyed. Decker managed to gain the upper hand, pinning Victor to the ground. He straddled him, his hands gripping Victor's throat. He looked into Victor's eyes, seeing a flicker of fear, a hint of regret. "It didn't have to be this way, Victor," Decker said, his voice strained. "We could have been better than this." Victor coughed, his face turning blue. "It's too late for that, Decker," he gasped. "The world is already broken. There's no saving it." Decker hesitated, his grip tightening. He knew that Victor was right, in a way. The world was a dark and dangerous place, filled with corruption and violence. But he couldn't let that justify Victor's actions. He couldn't let him off the hook. With a final surge of strength, Decker tightened his grip, cutting off Victor's air supply. Victor struggled, his body convulsing, but Decker held firm, his resolve unwavering. Finally, Victor went limp, his body stilling. Decker released his grip, collapsing onto Victor's lifeless body. He lay there for a moment, catching his breath, his mind racing. He had done it. He had defeated Victor, preventing the arms sale, saving countless lives. But at what cost? He had lost Aisha, a woman who had sacrificed herself for the greater good. He had lost Victor, a man who had once been his brother, his friend. He had lost a part of himself, a part of his soul. He rose to his feet, his body aching, his heart heavy. He looked around at the wreckage, the devastation, the death. He had won the battle, but he had lost the war. He knew that his life would never be the same. He could never go back to his quiet retirement, his peaceful existence. He was a changed man, scarred by the events of the past few weeks. As he walked away from the island, leaving behind the destruction and the memories, he knew that his journey was far from over. There were still other battles to be fought, other injustices to be righted. The world was a dangerous place, and he was the only one who could stop it. The end was just a new beginning. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Decker would never stop fighting. He would never give up. He would always be there, standing between the innocent and the darkness. A lone warrior in a world that desperately needed him. The cost had been great, but the fight would continue.